I am very pleased to welcome Tom Nichols to our little radio show today. He's the author of The Death of Expertise and Our Own Worst Enemy, The Assault from Within on Modern Democracy. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic, and for 25-some years, he taught at the U.S. Naval War College. He also is somebody that you really want to follow on social media. His handle is one, I think it's probably one of the best on social media. He has always used Radio Free Tom. Well, Radio Free Tom is on the radio today. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me.
I want to talk to you about the letter that you wrote to the new head of the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who actually, at least so far on the job, has not embarrassed himself. I don't know if you saw, he posted a little video talking about the crash at D.C. and how, you know, he's going to do everything to help in the investigation. And I thought, well, okay, there you go. One good day. I don't know how many more good days there will be, but I would like to think that maybe he can rise to the occasion. But I wanted to talk to you about the open letter you wrote to him and the advice you had for him. Please share that with us.
Well, I began by saying, look, I was dead set against your appointment. You wouldn't have been my choice. You're not qualified. You're going to be in over your head. The bad guys in the world are not going to respect you, which, maybe wasn't the most effective way to get someone to listen to your advice.
Miss Manners might object.
But I said, look, but here we are. And so, let me offer this. We both love our country. So, I did, work in national security affairs on and off in my career for almost 40 years. So, let me offer a couple of, bits of advice, including, one of them was the standard advice that, listen to your subordinates. Over the years, I dealt with a lot of generals and admirals and ambassadors, and I was an aide to a senator. And what I found is that the biggest flaw in powerful people is insecurity. They don't listen. They talk, and they issue orders, and they mimic activity. And I said, don't be that guy. There's a lot of people there that are there to help you and to make sure that you are. I said, look, their success is your success. But more to the point, I said, look, I know how you got this job, but you're going to have to lead the military now, and you're going to have to leave a lot of that crazy rhetoric behind, even though that's what, why you were hired and why you got the job. And I just thought it was important to say, look, this is something different now. This isn't a talk show. This isn't a game. This isn't reality TV. You are now the Secretary of Defense, perhaps the most important job after President of the United States. You will be the last person the president talks to, most likely, before deciding to go to war or to use nuclear weapons. And I was hoping to just put that out there to kind of, I guess to impress the gravity of this on people that just don't seem to understand it, including Hegseth himself. You're right, he had a good day, but he also, sat there at his desk in his shirt sleeves and he kind of read a statement prepared for him, and it didn't engender a lot of confidence in me. Well, it didn't, anyway.
Yeah, and while I will acknowledge it was not a bad day, there was also the reports that not only has he removed retired General Milley's security, he is also contemplating demoting him in retirement. Now, I understand that at least on paper, if that happens, Mark Milley can take him to court to try to get his position reinstated to the same rank. But, military people tend to want to kind of stay out of politics for the most part. And I just think that that seemed like for his first act, that was so petty and unnecessary.
and dangerous because, as I just wrote today in an article that just went up a few hours ago at The Atlantic, it's dangerous because he took away his security detail, and Milley and John Bolton and Brian Hook and Mike Pompeo, all of whom have had their security details canceled by this administration, are all under death threats from the Iranians for their role in the operation to kill General Soleimani. So it's more than pettiness. It's more than just taking down a picture. I mean, these kinds of policies are exposing people to genuine physical danger. I should note, for following Donald Trump's orders, for acting as part of Donald Trump's administration. But of course, what Hegseth's really doing is he wants to go after Milley for his criticism of Donald Trump. And for this kind of misbegotten idea that somehow Milley was going behind Trump's back during January 6th, which is just nonsense. But it shows you the priorities, and this is the thing I was hoping Hegseth wouldn't do. It shows you the priorities of this new administration and the new Secretary of Defense, which is not to defend the country and to take care of our people in uniform. It's to settle political scores and act on the president's personal, agenda of retribution.
I know that you would never name names or reveal confidences, but you obviously know people who are still actively in the military. How do they feel? What are they saying to you about Pete Hegseth?
I think the reaction among some of the folks that I knew and worked with over the years was just disbelief. It wasn't even a partisan reaction. It was simply when the nomination first came out, the reaction was basically like my reaction, which was, is this a joke? Is this a prank? Is this tweet real from Donald Trump actually saying Pete Hegseth is the nominee? Because I think Hegseth was so far off the charts unqualified. I mean, he might be the most unqualified major cabinet nominee in modern American history. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So I think a lot of folks just looked at it and said, this can't be real. This can't be happening. How does this person who's never really managed or done very much other than, becoming a major in the Army, how is this person going to run a 3 million, basically the biggest bureaucracy in the world? And I think that, there's still a kind of general sense of shock that this even was possible. I think even to the last minute, there were people still saying, look, the Senate's going to do the right thing. They understand that this is impossible, that, it can't happen. And I think, we saw how that went.
There are members of the Senate who themselves either have served in the military or who have family who've served in the military. And I've got to tell you, if I were in the military and I were looking at the Republicans in the Senate, I would consider this a huge, huge betrayal. The fact that, somebody pressured Joni Ernst. She was clearly ready to get rid of his nomination while it was still in committee. Tom Tillis lies to Hegseth's former sister-in-law. Oh, if you just go public, I'll vote against him. It's the cowardice is staggering to me.
Yeah, it's incredible political cowardice from people who basically like being senators. I mean, I worked in the Senate, and I can tell you that, senators love being senators. There are very good ones, and there are some bad ones, but they all kind of revere the institution, and they don't want to leave it. And Donald Trump has made it clear, if you oppose anything I want, I will drive you from politics. I think it was interesting that only Mitch McConnell really, sort of stood up now that he doesn't have to worry about anything. He's not going to run for re-election. He doesn't care. But McConnell's also the guy that could have whipped everybody into line to impeach and convict Donald Trump and didn't do it. Yep. So, I don't really have any confidence that they're going to stop RFK or Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel. I mean, these are all incredibly dangerous and irresponsible, and I would even say reckless nominations, but they're probably going to go through because obedience to Donald Trump is now the most important value among Republican senators.
There have been reports that Donald Trump wants to purge the upper echelons of each of the military branches so that he can install more Trump-friendly leadership. He's already gotten rid of the head of the Coast Guard, Linda Fagan, saying that she was, something about DEI. She was too supportive of it. She was too much DEI. Something about DEI offended him, about Linda Fagan, the commandant of the Coast Guard. Do you think that he and Pete Hegseth are going to carry out a purge?
I think they're probably going to try, and Milley is kind of a good test case because what they're doing to Mark Milley is unconscionable and I would say stupid, except that it has such severe repercussions, to basically call in a 4-star and say, we're going to take away a star because we just don't like politically, we just don't like you. And I think it may be a test case to see who pops up, among many of Milley's retired colleagues and other leaders in the defense community to say enough's enough. This is not just Donald Trump's idea. If you look at Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation plan that Trump claimed not to know anything about, but clearly knows plenty about, purging the military of, woke generals and admirals and, reestablishing war fighters and all of that malarkey is right there. But I think what that really means is to establish an officer corps that this time around, when Donald Trump says do unconstitutional things, they will snap to attention and say, yes, sir. You asked me earlier, Joan, what people in the military think about this. Look, there are people in the military who are very happy that Donald Trump is president again. I would say 99.99% of all the officers I've ever known are consummate professionals. They understand their duty to the Constitution. But there are people who are very happy about this. And as I wrote last winter, Trump will find them and promote them. And that's an unfortunate reality, but our system wasn't, especially our system with the president as commander-in-chief, wasn't designed to deal with any of this, and that's really the problem.
Tom, I don't know what the military procedure is. If Pete Hegseth says he wants to take a star away from Mark Milley, can he just write his own little executive order? Is there a process? Is there a hearing?
Yeah, there's a whole process, including an investigation, and the Secretary of Defense can accept or reject the findings of that. But again, it's been so rarely done that we're sort of in terra incognita. But yes, there's a process. It involves a lot of. The Pentagon's very bureaucratized, but in the end, the Pentagon and the U.S. government are designed to do what the Secretary and the President want done. The President is the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. Now, whether, that means you can simply violate, Mark Milley's rights, take away his star, whatever it is, it doesn't mean that, but it does grant him a lot of power. And I think, if anything, even if the effort is unsuccessful, the fact that they're going to try is a shot over the heads of all of the current officers in the military to say, even after you retire, we can reach out and touch you.
You said Pete Hegseth, if there was an investigation, could accept or reject the report. So are you saying, let's say there's an investigation, it says, no, this man hasn't done anything that would warrant removing a star. What if Pete Hegseth rejects that investigation? Can he say, I don't care, we're doing it anyway?
Yeah, I'm not a military lawyer, so I'm not actually sure what happens in that case. But my guess is that Pete Hegseth is not going to approve an investigation that wasn't going to reach anything but that conclusion anyway.
One of the things.
Yeah, my sense is that if there's an investigation, it's going to reach that conclusion, and be right from the get-go.
Mark Esper in Trump's first administration famously restrained him when Donald Trump wanted to use the U.S. military against protesters. And Mark Esper was like, yeah, just really can't do that. No, this not the right circumstances. Can't happen. Will Pete Hegseth stand up to Donald Trump and say, you know what, not a good idea to shoot the people protesting you're this or you're that?
I can't speak for Pete Hegseth, and I don't know, the secretary's mind. But my assumption here, given everything he's said and written and the degree to which that, he has sworn fealty to Donald Trump, is that he was hired not to be Mark Esper. He was hired so that when Donald Trump says, beat the F out of them, which is what he said during the protests, shoot them in the legs, that this time he has a Secretary of Defense who's going to say whatever you say, Mr. President. That's what all of these appointments are about. I mean, all of these, Donald Trump the first time around, the deal, I think, with the Republican establishment was, we know everybody's freaked out about Donald Trump. He's never been, doesn't know what he's doing, has a lot of wacky ideas. But look, there are going to be real people around him, Jim Mattis and, even Mnuchin and, others that are the adults in the room, that famous expression. Well, Trump learned from that and said, these are the people who say no to me. And this time around, we're not going to have anybody that's going to say no to me. I don't want to call the FBI and order up an investigation and have some uppity FBI director tell me he's not going to do it. I'm going to put somebody there who says, you bet, Mr. President, we're going to get right on that.
You wrote recently about something that I was talking about on the radio, and that was the announcement from the Air Force that they were going to pull the video that they'd been using in their training courses about the Tuskegee Airmen. And there was a hue and cry on social media. I don't know if that had any effect, but it seemed like within a day or two, it was like, oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That was a mistake. That video, it's right back where it used to be. Why did that happen? How did it get put back? And what can we learn some lessons there that we can apply to other crazy things that are going to be happening?
Yeah, it was interesting that Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama, was up in arms about this. She said this is an example of malicious compliance. That is, when people say, okay, I got an order I don't like, so I'm going to fulfill it in the most damaging way possible.
To show the absurdity of it, or show that it's just so bad.
Right, or to be kind of passive-aggressive. I wrote about this a day or two ago in The Atlantic, and the example I used was, if you want to understand malicious compliance, anyone who's told their teenager to load the dishwasher, right, and your kid says, I'll load the dishwasher. And then you go, oh, this is all wrong. Get out of here. I'll do it myself. And the kid goes, great. You'll never ask me to do that again. But I think in this case it was, look, federal bureaucrat. I was a federal employee for 25 years. When somebody says, find all this DEI stuff and root it out, and if you find it and you don't report it within 10 days, we are going to take adverse personnel action on you. People don't sit around and say, well, does this inclusion of, this story of the first black pilots, does that count? They say, you know what? It counts. And just take all that stuff out for review, because that's what the Air Force said. We're just reviewing these materials. And right?
Well, what caused them to change their mind? I mean, that's what I want to know. Was it because there's a lot of outcry on social media, particularly when something egregious or outrageous or chaotic happens, but it doesn't always mean that it's going to be undone. How did this get undone?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody in the Air Force, I don't have enough I can't peer enough into what happened in Texas. Apparently this took place in Texas. I don't know that it was done or undone. It may well be exactly as the Air Force said. Look, we pulled all these things we got this executive order. It said scrub all the DEI stuff out. So we pulled out all our training stuff and we took out anything we thought, we took out for review anything we thought we needed to look at. Basically what I suspect is that somebody called up and said, this is how far this is going to go, and somehow alerted the public or the press and created this whole kind of tempest. But I think it was an example of the reality that when you say scrub all federal materials for DEI, people are not going to sit around, agonizing about nuance. They're going to say, if I don't do this, I get punished. I'm a federal employee. There will be an adverse action. That's bad. The president's issued this order. I have to fulfill it. I think, if anything, the outburst from Senator Britt to me sounded more like, listen, you're ordered to do this, but don't do it in a way that anybody finds out about or that could be embarrassing.
Exactly, yeah.
We really want to do this, and we want to send this message to MAGA world that we're doing this stuff, but don't tell anybody exactly what it is because it looks ridiculous when you sort of see it in the light of day.
Yeah. Well, I want you to know that my partner, Ray, I have told him repeatedly that he loads the dishwasher like a capuchin monkey on crack. But what I have learned, I now don't touch the dishwasher. I put all my dirty dishes in the sink and I walk away. And if he wants to load the dishwasher like a capuchin monkey on crack, God love him. Go with God. You do you.
This is there are so many dysfunctions going on here beyond malicious compliance, Joan. I think, but I think you've learned how to deal with the people who load dishwashers poorly. They don't get any dishes.
Yeah, exactly. Are you seeing evidence of malicious compliance in other branches, or? Because that was the most egregious example that I read about, and I know that's what you wrote about in the Atlantic. Is there something I've missed?
No, I don't think even what happened in Texas was malicious compliance. I think that was, again, Senator Britt trying to take the embarrassment of that moment and throw it back on the people who had to execute this very ill-advised executive order, which is a poorly written order that carries, this potential threat of punishment for federal employees in it. And so I haven't seen any examples. The problem is, as I wrote about this, if all of them are, if everything is, if these policies by their nature are malicious, what is the non-malicious way to interpret them?
Yeah.
What would non-malicious compliance look like? And I think part of the problem is that these orders were written in a very performative, way to communicate with the president's base and the MAGA faithful. Look, we're doing all this day one stuff. We're getting rid of all the woke stuff. We're getting rid of all the DEI stuff. But again, in the light of day, when actual human beings sit down to do this, a lot of the examples of this start to look pretty ridiculous. I think that there would be bipartisan agreement that a lot of these things, as a federal employee, I had to sit through DEI presentations, and, I think a lot of them probably are unnecessary. They are probably a waste of money. But when you take this kind of, flamethrower and say all of it has to go, you're going to get some very weird outcomes, again, from people who are not going to try to parse this if it means risk to their own career. And I think I just haven't seen any examples of what I think is malicious compliance with this. I think the problem is that it just looks silly when you do it, and the people who told you to do it then get mad and call it malicious compliance.
Tom Nichols writes for The Atlantic. I strongly suggest that you follow him on social media at Radio Free Tom. I follow him on Blue Sky because he brings an informed and amusing point of view to many of the things that drive you bat poop crazy. Tom, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break.
Joan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.